Hi, nice to see you all. I'm Melinda Cooper. I'm a co-producer of the Shakespeare in Prisons Conference, one of the organizers for our network. We're so happy to be able to expand the network through opportunities like this. Thank you all so much for being here.
So today we're delving into a lot of the folks who were contributors to Ashley's recently published book, Prison Theater and the Global Crisis of Incarceration, which is a fantastic read. I'm just finding all kinds of commonalities in terms of our approaches as prison arts practitioners to our respective programs about centering love, centering community, centering empathy. And I'm admitting people into the meeting as I'm talking. But I am, and we are very honored to have with us today Ashley Lucas. Ashley is currently an associate professor at the University of Michigan, and she was the director of PCAP, the Prison Creative Arts Program here for up until I think about 2 years ago, right? And spent the last 5 years writing this, I think.
7 years. That's how long it took me to write it.
So for those of you who haven't gotten a copy of this book yet, under the session detail in Sketch, we have links that you can buy it yourself. And I highly, highly recommend it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ashley and our wonderful panel of contributors today. And take it away, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Scott, and thank you to all of you for coming today. I am honored that that the Shakespeare in Prisons Conference has opened up so much space to talk about my book. It has been a labor of love, and I hope very much that the writing and the book itself honor the lives of a whole lot of people who can't be here with us today. I was very privileged to get to do research with prison theater companies in 10 different nations throughout the world. And some of the people who were involved in those theater companies are now out of prison and home to celebrate with us today. And so these are the voices that I'm so excited and proud to be able to lift up right here in this very room. But I also want us to keep in our minds and our hearts all the folks in prison who can't join us today, who are living through a particularly devastating time in this moment of COVID-19. So please keep them in your thoughts, and if you're a praying kind, in your prayers, because they need our love and joy and support now more than ever. So I'm going to ask all of my fellow panelists to please introduce themselves. I'm going to start with a very esteemed colleague of mine, Kathryn Hamer, who is joining us today all the way from New Zealand. So I'm not sure if everybody here got to see both of the panels that we'll be discussing today, but one of them was an interview that Kathryn did with me about the book. And then the second one is a panel of actors who were part of prison theater companies before they came home. So Kathryn, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Ashley. I'm coming to you from New Zealand today, and usually resident in the great state of Texas. I was very, very grateful to be able to meet Ashley a couple of years ago and to have the privilege really of talking with her about this amazing book that she's created. We met because I was doing some research on prison theater practitioners and their experiences of running theater programs in prisons. And I'm now in the criminology PhD program at the University of Texas at Dallas, with the great desire to keep trying to develop a research agenda around prison theater, because despite its amazing work, it's very little represented in the academic literature, and that is a key source of reference for people who run corrections departments around the United States. So certainly overseas as well, but in the US, we really do have very little data that they would reference. So just excited to be part of that big piece. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Kathryn. We're so glad to have you with us today. G, would you mind introducing yourself and also telling us a little bit about the theater company that you have worked with?
Oh, sure. I'm humble. Thank y'all for allowing me here. This is real prestige to me. My name is Gregory Devon Winfrey Jr., a.k.a. G. I'm a member of Shakespeare Behind Bars. under the tutelage of Mr. Curt Tofteland. It's kind of a big deal. He had Circles of Reconciliation and Redemption that taught me deep empathy and showed me a whole different way of life. I came to the understanding that where everything else failed me, the art found me, ushered me straight on in and showed me a different perspective in life. I did 30 years of incarceration straight. I went in 18 and came out at 48. December 3rd, 2019. I've been home roughly about a year, going on next month. And it's been a roller coaster ride, but thanks to the arts, I have found a way to always connect to something deeper than me. It may sound crazy, but sometimes I feel like Ophelia where I don't have a voice. But I'm grateful, I'm humble, and I'm thankful to be here. Ashley, I got your book, I'm reading it, and I thank you for that. And like I said, it's an honor to be here.
I thank you, G. And the day that I got to visit the Circle of Shakespeare Behind Bars and share with you all is one that I really treasure. And I hope I represented it well in the book, but you all gave me so much that day, and it's an honor to get to be here today with you and with Curt.
Thank you.
Katie Langford comes to us all the way from London, England today, and we're so excited and honored to have Katie here. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are, Katie, and what theater company you worked with?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Katie, I'm in London, but I wasn't actually in prison in London. I ended up in prison in Australia, and I was very fortunate to end up in a prison with the most amazing theatre program, a lovely pair of women. Their theatre company is called Somebody's Daughter, and yeah, it transformed my life. I've since come home. I've been back 5 years. I've rebuilt my career. I went on to work with one of the biggest women's theatre companies, prison theatre companies in England, Clean Break Theatre. So I did a lot of work with them as well when I got back, and they put on some amazing shows, but tend to be post-release. But yeah, so I'm so excited to be here. So hello.
Thank you, Katie. We're honored and blessed to have you with us today. Mary, would you please introduce yourself and tell us which prison theater company you worked with?
I'm Mary Heinen McPherson, and I was one of the original Sisters Within theater troupe members 31 years ago in January at the Florence Crane Women's Facility in Coldwater, Michigan, where I served life. I'm very happy to be here today. I've been free for 18 years. Yay.
That's beautiful. And Mary is also the program coordinator for the Prison Creative Arts Project at the University of Michigan, where she trains all of our student and community and formerly incarcerated volunteers to go back into the prisons and keep doing all this beautiful work. So Mary is the force that keeps us going. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
And last, but certainly not least, Justin Gordon, sporting a brand new hair color, has come to us from right here in Michigan. And I would love it if you would tell us who you are, Justin, and what your relationship to prison theater is.
Thank you, Doc. My name is Justin Gordon from the west side of Detroit, Michigan. And when I was 17 years old, I was falsely accused of rape. I didn't have a lot of funds, and I already had a mentality that was leading me to prison anyway, because that's what happens, when you Black from a low socioeconomic status in my country. So 19, I was facing 15 years of prison. I ended up doing like 5 years probation. I only did a couple of months, maybe about altogether like over 80 days actually in jail. But I spent half of my 20s under state supervision. I spent a lot of my time at University of Michigan, a ward of the state. I was basically on a work release program because of my admissions at University of Michigan. But when I got there, I got with the Prison Creative Arts Project, which at the time was led by the esteemed Dr. Ashley Lucas, and it opened my eyes to a whole world of creativity, theater, activism, and love that I just didn't know existed. And since then, I continue to pursue my theatric endeavors, even throughout probation and after probation, including working with the National Theater Institute and bringing that energy and bringing that activism, and not even activism, just bringing that reality to Broadway eventually. And that's where we're going.
And Justin, would you mind telling folks about the fellowship you recently received?
Yes. Thank you, Doc. I recently was inducted into the second cohort of the Lin-Manuel Miranda Fellowship. So I'm excited to begin 2 years working with Lin-Manuel Miranda and his team. And like I said, bringing the same concepts we learned from Shakespeare and we learned from incarceration, bringing those concepts to people like Lin-Manuel Miranda so we can get to a bigger audience.
Well, the chat is just full of people who are as impressed as I am about your fellowship, Justin, and I am so incredibly proud of you and of each person on this panel. One of the great joys of my life is getting to bear witness to all of these amazing lives as you all do the many incredible things that you are doing. So I wanted to just at this point really get the audience involved and have a conversation about we've already had a chance to talk on the pre-recorded panel about the things that really matter to us about prison theater. And we've got a whole bunch of folks in this room who have many, many decades of combined experience doing theater in prison from other parts of the world who are in the room today. And I would just love for us to be able to talk with our esteemed panelists about these experiences and answer any questions that you have. And also, I think seriously about what we can do as theater artists who care about people in prison in this particularly difficult moment of the pandemic. So does anybody have, feel free to unmute your video and your audio if you want to jump in with a question or a comment to connect to any one of our panelists or to us as a group.
I have a question.
Go right ahead, Scott.
This could be for any or all of the folks on the panel today, but in reading the book and what I was just saying about building community and what theater can do beyond, performance, what happens with ensemble when we're working in incarcerated settings. And if anyone wants to jump on that, like how, what was your experience like walking into a circle, as Curt would say, or walking out of the circle on the other side? What was that journey like for any or all of you?
Well, one of the stories that I tell in the book that I think Katie could tell better than I do is about her journey home. The play that I write about in the book that she was a part of with the Somebody's Daughter Theater Company in Australia actually used the moment of Katie's release, which was impending several days after the show closed, to help shape their production. And then Katie performed it and lived it. Could you talk a little bit about what that was like, especially since you had to leave your sisters in Somebody's Daughter a continent away when you finally left?
Now, I don't think it really dawned on me, the connections that I'd made until I came to leave. And I realized I'd created a new community, a new family. That's what got me through prison. That's the only thing that got me through prison. And I've been so focused about going home, and, then I realized I had to leave all these people that I loved, and I couldn't see many of them again. Our criminal records would actually stop us ever sort of visiting each other's country. And it was huge, but it's wonderful. The writing just poured out of me. It was one of the easiest things to write. I wrote a song. The girls in the ensemble with me, though, I remember them looking at me saying, what planet are you from? Because my imagination and the world I was describing back in London that I miss so much just seemed completely made up. So probably a little bit eccentric, I like tea and cats and weird things, and I sort of reference lots of strange things in the song, but they were all meaningful to me. It was wonderful to create this world and sort of show a little bit of the life I was going to go back to, and just, transport people out of that very beige nothingness place, which is a prison.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
Do any of the other panelists want to talk about what it was like to enter the space of the prison theater ensemble, that community, and then to have to leave it?
Sure.
At a later date? Go ahead, G.
Thank you. I always looked at it as when I matured into it. I never left the circle. I just carry it with me now. All the stories, all the reconciliations and the things that I ran across in the circle, I was blessed to adhere to. I carry that with me now to this day. like I said, it's been such a challenge being out there for so long. I mean, it's a lot of challenges with this computer stuff, right? And all the processes that I left as a teenager, came back a middle-aged guy. And it's a lot that comes with that. But the art's there. I was asked a question when I said that when everything else failed me, the arts found me. Because the arts ushered me in as I was. And they built from there, whereas it wasn't a plateau or status quota that I had to reach to get there. Whereas I could identify as a young black guy from the west side of Detroit that was out there campaigning to go to prison, right? But when I go to doing theater, like I said, something about Ophelia, she became like my biggest character that Shakespeare had did. I played Hamlet, but I loved Ophelia to death because it was like she didn't have a voice. Everybody spoke straight through her. And that's how I seen a lot of stuff that was set up for me coming up from where I'm from. So I say when the arts found me and saved me, it really did, because it ushered me and embraced me as I was and said, now let's start from this point here where I got you at and let you see life through a whole different perspective, through some other people things, because while I'm sitting up here crying about shoes, it's a lot of people that didn't even have feet. So the empathy and the drives and everything that I learned in this circle, I still carry that with me to this day. And some other guys have been fortunate enough to come from out of those dismal crypts with me. And when I think it's going too dark for me, I can call those guys now and say, well, what's going on? And the guy say, well, this, that, and other, blah, 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 and get a guy back on track to see what's really real. And Hamlet, it's a ritual I go through every morning. I ask myself the first act one, scene one, who's there, right? Ask myself that. Look in the mirror every morning after I do all my little prayers and whatnot. Who's there? And it's those things that save me, from the old me, to let me see that this is where you go with it. So that's how it really saved me, the arts. And when you said global, I never seen myself in a global aspect, right? I didn't, right? I was, I mean, that was far as thing from my mind. But I know now that when I see it, like, I'm homo erectus, right? I got fingerprints and footprints like everybody else. So some self-worth there. So I am global like everybody else. I am a citizen of the world, regardless of what barriers and boundaries that people have in their own mind states or physical, right, out here. But me, I can see that self-doubt. So when I got your book, that grabbed me from the thing, the global aspect of it, like, wow, this is really big. So I'm humbled by that. And so when everything else did fail me, that's how the art saved me, by raising my mind state. Like Curt said, we came in, don't feel you. I can't. I believe that representation is one of the highest forms of maturity that a person can receive. If I can't do it for me, at least let me do it for you. And that's to the whole art community.
That's beautiful, G. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Justin, it looks like you're ready to talk.
Really quick, just because I see a couple other questions in the chat. I just want to speak on the ensemble real quick. I remember when I was 20 years old, and this is my first time ever walking, through a prison. I had on like I had business clothes on. I tell the story because I have to tell the story. I had business clothes on walking through. It's a Chippewa Valley Correctional Facility up in Upper Peninsula in Michigan. And so I walked through the yard, and it's, of course, 80% Black people on this yard. It's just like, and there was a very palpable energy because I'm with all white people. It's me with a shirt and tie on, all white people, all 7 of us in the guard. And then in the yard, it's all Black people. I mean, it might have been like a couple of speckles of salt, but all Black people on this yard. So we looking at each other. They see me, I'm seeing them. And it's, it's happening. Like, man, it was just weird, So somebody asked me, like, where you from? And I said, 6 Mile. That's a neighborhood. That's a street in Detroit. I'm from the West Side, 6 Mile. And I felt this energy, like this, like, oh yeah, I'm like y'all. I had this like this need at 20 years old to like want to identify with these individuals. And I throw up the 6, and so at this point, when I do this, the whole yard like goes up. I mean, I'm talking about everybody start throwing up their signs, they start yelling, and the guard literally grabbed us and ushered us into the place. And I won't even tell the whole story, but when he took me up, he took us into the place, and PCAP was in danger at that point, not being able to come back. So I had to learn that lesson. But the best lesson, real quick, the ensemble was with a guy, Wayne State. This guy was about to graduate before he went to prison. This guy was about to get a law degree from Wayne State. He was 70, 80 years old. He told me, hey man, what you did was stupid. You would have messed your chance up. We need y'all here. You would have messed your chance up trying to be cool. He said, he told me his story. He said he had his law degree. He went out one night. He went out one night and got into an altercation with a guy, made a mistake and killed him. With the guy ended up died. They had a fight one night. Went to prison for the rest of his life. He had a law degree. Whole future gone off one night. And so that alone, you know, like I never ever forgot that conversation with that dude because he's still locked up and I'm not. So that, yeah, like having those type of ensemble conversations to fuel me while I'm out here, you know, that I'm pushing forward and I'm making the right decisions.
Thank you, Justin. Mary.
I was part of a group that performed with students, including students of Ashley's class. And it was a wonderful ensemble group that did multiple scenes. This would have been about 2015. And at the end of the school year, towards spring, we were invited to participate in a presentation and a performance honoring two justices, Justice Sotomayor and a justice of the Supreme Court in Germany. And so I went from being an ensemble in a penitentiary overrun with vermin that had horrific living conditions with the poorest of the poor, with generations of women, to taking a stage at the University of Michigan and performing in front of one of the justices of the Supreme Court that I most admired. And I will never, ever forget it as long as I live. And when it was all over and she was introduced to me by El Chen, by our arts programming staff person at the time, Justice Sotomayor apologized to me for what we had suffered in the Glover versus Johnson case, which was discrimination against women in prison who had absolutely no budget and no money and no programming and no law library and no access to the courts. That was later remedied in the Glover case. But I mean, can you imagine coming from the gutter and to the Supreme Court justice who's apologizing to you for what happened to you? I mean, it was just mind-boggling. But that's the power of theater. That's the power of hearing somebody's story and being in empathy and sympathy with them and putting yourself in their shoes.
It was such a beautiful day, Mary. And I have to add to that story that Mary's being humble in the telling of all of this. Mary was once known as Mary Glover, and she was the lead named plaintiff on that lawsuit. And in doing so, in making those lawsuits that fought for the rights of women in Michigan that have never been overturned, she put into practice such landmark case law in the United States that Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor knew who Mary was when she said that she used to be called Mary Glover. So that was part of why the justice was apologizing for what had happened to Mary, because our homegirl is famous. She's changed lives all across the country and done things that no dastardly court system has been able to even begin to challenge. So that's part of the gift that you give to us and to the women who are still serving time, Mary. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've seen a whole lot of other questions in the chat, and I want to make sure that we honor what people are asking. Curt, I think G answered your question already in the course of speaking earlier, but Melinda, do you want to ask yours? It looks like the next one in line in the chat came from you about hope.
Hi. My question was specifically, Ashley's book touches on the role of hope. Can any of our speakers today speak to the role of hope in their experience / journey or path or whatever you want to call it?
And I want to pull Karen into this question as well, because it's not just about the making of the theater, but I personally drew a lot of hope out of bearing witness and studying the theater practice of so many other people inside. So would you mind kicking us off with this one, Karen?
Wow, I'm going to be really thinking out loud, because I'm really thinking at the moment, as I'm working on an article with a man who is incarcerated in Colorado. We are exploring the dynamic between volunteers and incarcerated participants in theater. And I think hope is really a beautiful way to talk about the intimacy of that partnership, which from, that research with theatre volunteers and from my own experience as one, is really made up of the elements of hope. So there's vulnerability, there's mutuality. I think that's, I'd be interested to hear from others about their thoughts about these things that I am identifying, vulnerability and mutuality, and a kind of a creation of a sacred space, so that it seems to me that there's a relational dynamic in that space, which creates, well, it's very powerful. I experienced it. It's very powerful. And part of what came out of that for me as a practitioner was the hope that something was being made that I knew certainly was transforming me. I didn't want to speak for anybody else in the group, but for my co-writer, would say that that's part of the transformation that he experienced in himself. And we do kind of take to task these words like transformation and healing and rehabilitation, and these are powerful, potent words, and we're really trying to interrogate what they mean. But I think part of what they mean is that we learn to hold hope for each other. Just going to throw that back, that little ball of thoughts.
Thank you. And it looks like Katie has something to say as well.
As long as I remember it when I speak, because everything goes out of my head as soon as I try and speak. But hope for me isn't just about the sort of hope you feel when you walk into a theatre space in prison. If you've read Ashley's book, she talks about another girl that was in with me and who sadly passed away after she was released. And there's hope for me in that beautiful thing that was created in someone's life, that I know how important being part of the play was every year, and being part of that was. And I can think of another person who also, had some severe learning disabilities, which had never really been addressed. And through participating in the plays, first of all, she had to have someone to help her all the time. But she'd been there for quite a long time. By the time I got there, she could learn words really quickly. She couldn't read. But again, I feel like it gives someone something to build something upon. You've got this magic that's created, something, and it's art. The hope comes from creating real art. And it's not just about rehabilitation, it's about being respected as an artist and being listened to and being heard.
Beautiful, Katie, thank you. I want to bounce this back to some of our other question askers, because there's so many lovely folks putting things in the chat. Christopher Bolster, did you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you being here today. It's so wonderful to hear about your experiences. I'll turn my video on. I guess my question is that there seems to be a real tension between this. I'm in prison because of mistakes that I made, and I'm in prison because society is unfair to me. So for instance, Justin, you mentioned how people of color aren't treated fairly in this country. And my question for the panelists is, how did your experiences in prison Shakespeare impact or change your perceptions about this issue, about that tension?
Can I start on that one? Oh, Justin, was you going?
Go ahead, G. Justin will fill in after you.
Okay, thanks for the question. I was still looking at the hope aspect. I love what Karen said about mutuality and vulnerability. Curt always taught us it was being in the service of others, right? And what I experienced when I came home was that hope is the cure to disparity, right? I live on a block with more vacant houses and stray dogs than it is people, right? Probably about 4 neighbors. And in the service of others, right? So if it's snow and you got 3 neighbors, I just go on and shovel all our snow at one time, right? You take the trash out, you take all of their trash out too. That's how few it is here. So it's a visual hope thing. When people can see hope, it's really that. And I learned that in the circle with Curt. I was blessed to see that. When we was meeting the Ashleys and stuff, right? I'm off the west side of Detroit, Ashley. We don't meet too many people, right? Good people that's sincere, right? So either way, it was like that. as far as with the disparity in the penitentiary with that thing there, I think it'll always be that eerie feeling between those that's captured and those that's holding, right? Because of, it seems like it doesn't get any better. But I learned something with my struggle was that individually, I was to understand people gonna be people, and that's all people ever gonna be. Where some people found mud, I found gold and diamonds. Period. Where some people seen gold, I seen mud. It was a matter of perspective with me. Curt, like my mentor of all times, right? Second only to Jesus and Shakespeare, probably me, right? And this is a 6-foot dude from North Dakota somewhere, right? I never would have thought that. But I knew I had the thing going with me where the society was blaming. I was looking at society in that perspective. But as I matured a lot, I seen, well, I had some 40 things going on with me. I was unempathetic in a lot of my ways. Didn't really care, didn't really share. Limited myself to a whole lot of stuff where I could have been better. But I met some good guys, and one of them led me to the circle of Shakespeare Behind Bars. That's my journey started to be in. Like they said, men at some point are masters of their own fate. The fault not in the stars, it's in ourselves. And I got that from Shakespeare, and that's what I really learned what accountability and responsibility really was when I was 40 years old. So I think that played a big part in my struggle anyway.
Thank you, G. Justin, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, thank you, G. I appreciate that. I'm gonna take a page out of Karen's playbook as far as just saying I'm gonna speak out loud. Because that was a really good question, Mr. Bolster, for sure. Because it is a dichotomy between the two. But I mean, me personally, I don't. Like my mama always said, fair or not fair, life not fair. So I start there, and then when I think about people of color, I don't think all the people of color are not treated the same. That's why I think that people are trying to make like blanket statements, but like people that identify as Negro, Indigenous, people of those ilk, that certain melanin, that's where I get very interested in, because I mean this country is built on a certain amount of people like losing pretty heavy, and I think also poor. You don't have to be melanated. If you're poor, you don't own land. They want you to be in a position of servitude, because that's how capitalism. That's how this capitalism works. I mean, so it's almost to the point where it's like, all right, when they corralled the country from the indigenous people, and they built the foundation, it's like somebody has to lose. And so we're going to create it so where they not only do they lose, but they're going to think they're the losers, and they're going to feel like the losers is the place that they're supposed to be. And I say they, I mean me and the people that I represent. Like we're supposed to think of ourselves as the losers subconsciously. And so that's where you get I'm in prison because of mistakes I made, because the whole time you were supposed to make these mistakes because the system is set up very brilliantly for you to feel inferior and for you not to activate all the potential superpowers that melanin in your skin probably could provide, or just just having that sense of real freedom in your mind. So I'm thinking out loud, but that's my take on that initially.
Thank you, Justin. And I will just add, as somebody who's now set foot in prisons in 10 different countries in the world, it cannot be an accident that people with low literacy rates, that people who are poor, that people who are indigenous and Black are locked up in disproportionate numbers, that immigrants are locked up in disproportionate numbers in every country that I visited. That just is not a social accident. There's something really happening with the way that we decide who belongs in a prison and who does not. I want to honor some more of our wonderful folks asking questions in the chat. Karen Davis, would you like to chime in?
So my question is, I'm a philosophy professor, and one of the things that I study is how prison theater works to build community and character. And I'm interested in exactly what it is, like putting my finger on what it is about theater and the arts that is so edifying, particularly inside, But instead of asking you that directly, because that's a really hard question, I want to ask the opposite. I want to ask if any of you have stories about programs that didn't work like you expected them to work, or moments inside your program where the community broke down a little bit and you were able to identify what was missing in that moment.
I thank you for the question. I had to grow into this one too. All the world's a stage, right? And we play many parts in the immortal words of William Shakespeare. And I think with me, I know with me drastically, it just seemed like it was a deeper connection with the arts than anything else, right? Human truth, we need community, right? And everything not for everybody. I tell that to people. I had to grow into that. But Curt beat it into me too. You ain't always right. Everybody ain't meant to be for. Maybe that's not for you. Things of that nature that I really had to see. But I can't say where a lot of stuff failed me. I had gave a lot of stuff, a lot of sincere efforts, and I was looking for those rewards to come back from those efforts, because usually what you put down come up. And I never reaped those benefits. I sat in AA and NA and stuff, sitting up in there high and drunk. I went to church, and no, I didn't like a lot of people up in there, right? And a lot of people outside of it didn't believe nothing they said. It was just something I took it as traditional and ritual that my grandmother and them had installed in me while coming up, right? And it didn't connect with me. But the arts hit me, whereas I met some guys, and then I was dealing with a genius too in my eyesight, that connected us in a way where we was a community. Even we, like I said, when we went to the circle, we didn't leave the circle. It was, like I say, I still carry that with me. The pages that they got out here about the arts, always get them a shout out. Like I say, I know honestly, I can speak for me and me only, is that like it really changed my perspective. And where everything else is supposed to change that perspective, I'm not talking about the quotes and the punchlines and all the other little stuff that people may say. The arts gave me a thing where I had a resistance and a responsibility. Like, oh, she couldn't have said it no better. It was so much mutuality and being vulnerable. I had never seen that. I mean, and it worked. I mean, I seen it. The guy that brought me to Shakespeare Behind Bars is a worldwide gangster, right? I mean, he's still in prison. And I'm going to just share this story because somebody asked me about this guy. This guy's such a good guy. This guy called me while he's still in prison with 50 years in, and wasn't even concerned about his own predicament. He was telling me to find this guy's father, this little guy he met in prison, so he can talk to his father. And I'm sitting on the other side of the fence on this side and said, man, wait, why are you not concerned about you? You got in 50 years on a parolable offense. He got mad at me and said nothing else to me. He said, because I was selfish. But this guy's the guy that led me to Shakespeare Behind Bars. And these are the guys that I was meeting in the art community. I mean, I was sitting up in there with some real good guys. Yeah, baby boy and them. I was sitting up in there with some real guys that wasn't seeing the sunlight. And they was perfectly content with what their life had led them to. And they were sitting up in there debating about even if Portia was a racist, was she a good lawyer? We sitting up debating about the quality of mercy. Things that was lifelong experiences to me connected me with these guys forever. And I think that's what the arts did for me. It took me elsewhere to see that part of the community. Like I say, I went to the circle, but I never left the circle. I still carry that with me. So like I say, if I don't do it for me, at least let me do it for you. That's just where I'm at with it. And I hope I answered that question good, because I live that every day. And like I say, this year been a real challenge to me in a lot of aspects. Yeah, but I love the challenges. I'm not shrinking from them. I'm with them. So I'm cool with it. I've never been a taxpaying, law-abiding citizens and all that stuff. And I love it.
You are such an inspiration, G.
No, you're inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Katie.
Yeah, just quickly add into that question. For me, I was just thinking about it, and actually, it was the energy the theatre practitioners and the people that were doing it brought in with them. I think that's so important. And in prison, you have to have twice as much energy and positive energy, because it's just that, I don't know, it just sucks it all up. So, and I was also thinking about it when I think it goes back to my earlier point. It goes right when it's done from a point of creating art together. I feel personally quite strongly about this, and sorry if upset anyone. I hate art as rehabilitation, art as therapy, because bollocks, that's an English word, because often it's to get funding or the money to fund the program, and that for me is when it goes wrong.
Well, and I have to add to that, Katie, that Maud Clark, who is the extraordinary director of Somebody's Daughter Theater Company, gets real angry anytime somebody mentions the word rehabilitation in connection with the theater work that Somebody's Daughter Theater Company does in Australia. And in her explanation of it, it's because the arts are therapeutic for all of us. We all improve our outlook, our emotional well-being, how we see the world, how empathetic we are to others when we engage with the arts. And people in prison don't need that more than any of the rest of us. Can you imagine what a world we'd live in if Congress was actively engaged in the arts, or if people who were administrators of universities? I would really love to do a theater workshop with the people who run my university right now, and they would never stand for it. But that level of empathy and growth is something that everybody could benefit from. And when people who are oppressed or poor are given access to the arts, we call it rehabilitation. And when people who are privileged have access to the arts, it's art for art's sake. And that division, I think, is very damaging to us all. Nancy, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, everybody, so far for your sharing this afternoon. I was just curious, and G, I think you actually touched on it already, but I was wondering what brought you to these arts and theater programs. Did you see a flyer? Was it an interesting class? Was it a teacher? Like, what brought you to be a participant?
Thanks for the question. Like I said, I had met some guys, and they weren't good guys, right? I've been knowing them for some years. I had roughly like 20 years. And these guys were gangsters, right? These guys were them guys. Nobody messed with them. They walk across water, if you could say it. Guy, baby boy, O'Neill. So, G, I think you should come over. I think you would like this. Cause I would always read something or engage in something good. But I would always say I used to want to go to heaven, but I used to like to dance with the devil. I was like the worst opportunist it was in North America, I would always say. I was always looking for a way where it wasn't a way, trying to be slick, and still was coming up short, right? And said, "Come on over, man. You might like it." And I knew the invitation coming from him, but he really was saying, like, "Yeah, come on over, because this is gonna work for you." And lo and behold, he took me over, and I met this tall dude named Curt out of North Dakota, and I was like getting to 213, and from there on out, we've been running ever since. Life-changing experiences, a couple of plays, a lot of tears. It was just magnificent. Like I said, changed my perspective. Where nothing else changed my perspective. Immortal Words of Shakespeare Behind Bars, and all the stories and spoken words, everything that we endeavored on definitely hit home with me. Like I said, I think it was like Shakespeare said something, all the world's a stage and everybody got their part, right? And that's why I say it ushered me right on in. I knew, you ever been somewhere like they say on that song on Cheers, you want to go where everybody know your name, and that old song they used to play. I just felt that there with them, like, this is where I belong. And I've never looked back from it. Even when, like I say, when I went in the circle, I know I never left the circle. I still carry them with me. And it was just that, I think it was, I was caught up on the messenger as well as the message. And the messenger that came to me was a guy, like I said, that I knew was for no nonsense. And he was, I got something for you, man. We've been playing around here a long time ago. And I met him when I first came in the Department of Corrections. And he told me, you're in trouble. You're in trouble because you're short, you're ambitious, and you think you have slick, and you're going to be here for the rest of your life. You don't get your life together. And it didn't surprise me that many years later, 20 years later, he invited me to Shakespeare Behind Bars. And I fell completely in love with it.
Thank you, G. I want to ask Mary to answer this question because she's one of the only people I met in the world who was incarcerated at the time that she helped to co-found a major prison theater troupe. So, Mary, would you tell us what drew you to do the work?
I was fascinated when I was asked if I wanted to take a theater course and social justice with Buzz Alexander. And he would come out to the prison and he'd bring the books and the materials and come with his students, and we would have class. So of course I said yes. I want to take that class today. Let's go. So in winter of 90, he came in and we opened the door for him, and he started to teach us. And one of the first things he said was, I've been studying this guy named Paulo Freire, and I've been checking out Augusto Boal, and there's this idea of guerrilla theater. And in guerrilla theater, you turn wherever you are into your own space, into your own thing. You just perform where you are and make it your own, and it can cause change. And I said, well, I'm in. That sounds good to me. And so it was introduced to me originally from a professor that I trusted. I knew he knew what he was talking about, with the idea that we could affect change and that we could affect change for everybody. So that was the instant attraction. And of course, over time, the theater troupe at the Coldwater facility that met in the TV production room became a really powerful, real interesting group of women, because we took it seriously. There was no games with it. And when we were ridiculed by staff and some prisoners for being actors, oh, they're just acting, or oh, they're just, whatever, to diss us, all that changed when it was Christmas and there was nothing happening in the prison. We were up to our eyes in snow, and the only thing for the whole holiday that was planned was our play. And everybody came to it. They brought dates. They were dressed up. The guards came. The administration came. I mean, you would not believe how many people attended that first play. It was packed. And of course, we were a smash hit. We were so successful, we all got fired because Buzz impersonated a prison guard, and the guards got mad. I had to go to the warden and say, could we please have our troupe back? We promise we will never again impersonate guards. So from the beginning, it was powerful. It was something that everybody enjoyed, and it was changing. And what it changed at that time was the perception of the women, because we were in a rural country place where there weren't many Black folks, and our theater troupe had Black members, and we were interacting as human beings to human beings, and we earned respect. And that was a really emotional, powerful thing to happen at that place in time. I mean, this place was so rural. We'd sit in the yard and watch the Amish drive by with their horse and buggies. So the fact that we had people of color in the cast, that we were funny, that we were engaging, that we practiced, that we attended, our meetings regularly, that spoke volumes. And then it spoke volumes so strong that 30, almost 1 years later, they're still performing. They're amazing, absolutely amazing. It's our longest standing workshop. But for me, the dedication and the commitment and honoring the process is what gave me hope. And it gave me hope in times when I didn't know if I was going to live or die in there. I mean, they took me out of there in the ambulance a couple of times, and I had 9 parole board hearings. I had 2 public hearings. I mean, my parole situation was a mess, and I had a lot of opposition from family members who were fighting with each other. There was some family members that came to visit me and said I should come home, and they were fighting with the other family members who thought I should have been executed. So, it's a really painful position to be in, all those years, where you're a lightning rod for, talk on should she live or should she die? Should she ever come home? Guards used to take bets on me on whether I would ever come out alive. But I made it, and I made it so that even here, theater has given me hope, because I'm older. My parents are dead. I have, you lose everything when you go in. You come out and you have to start completely over. So for me, starting over was getting in my little car, driving across the state from Grand Rapids, and hiring into PCAP. And PCAP respected me and honored me and helped me get a life going in times when I really didn't have much to come home to, other than hope that I could build a life for myself somehow, starting with my 3 little votive candles in the window the night I slept on the floor in my own house. So for me, PCAP and the arts and this process and knowing all of you gives me hope that will happen as long as we can possibly perform and as long as we can make it happen for everybody else.
And even in the pandemic, the Sisters Within continue to make theater via correspondence. And all of that is possible because of you, Mary.
Well, they're wonderful actors too.
They are. We're at time, and I want to ask each of our panelists to share a closing thought. I want to start with Karen Hamer because I know you've got to get going soon. If you have a moment just to say how you're feeling at the end of all of this.
Yeah, I'm crying. I'm deeply moved. I'm deeply just, I don't know what all the words are to be able to hear Mary, that story. I'm not ashamed to cry and to be partnered with you all and listening to each other in the sacred space of sharing our stories and going forward together to make the space wider for each other. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Karen. I feel so blessed to have you in my life and so grateful that you could be here with us for this conversation today. Thank you. Justin, do you want to give us a parting thought, my darling?
I'm thankful for Dr. Lucas, Notre Dame, Scott Jackson, everybody participated. And I feel like what Mary just said, I just gotta, that's a mic drop. I think that's what we all doing here, like people taking bets on us, whether we come out or not alive, like this is really going down, and we still here. We made it, it's somebody praying on our door for us, somebody betting on whether we make it or not. And that's ain't nothing more than that. And here we are still breathing.
And I have to say, in front of all of the esteemed people here and whoever may watch this recording afterwards, that the people on this panel, and Justin in particular, have come into my life as blessings because of this prison theater work. I was a new professor at the University of Michigan when Justin literally showed up on my doorstep to get involved with work at PCAP. And Justin and Mary are both part of my family. And having you all in my life because of this theater work is one of the greatest blessings of my entire existence. So thank you. Katie, I want to ask you to give us some final thoughts from the evening in London.
From the evening, yes, it is. It's getting quite late here. I've just really, really moved, and I don't know, I feel so energized and excited to have connected with so many people. Mary, G, Justin, your stories. We spoke together on a panel sort of not so long ago, and I came away and I was so sort of energized. And yeah, oh gosh, you're just amazing people. And I don't know, there's something really special about going through what I've been through and the people that I've met and the opportunities that it's led on to. And just meeting you here today and hearing each other's stories, I feel like, yeah, I was given a gift. It was like one of the worst things that could ever happen to you, but it turned out to be the most incredible thing that has ever happened to me because of the people.
Thank you, Katie. And I cannot tell you what joy you and the daughters gave me when I visited you in Australia, and the light and love that I still carry. Like G keeps saying that he has not left the circle. I'm still with the daughters, as I know you are in your heart as well. So thank you so much for bringing that to us here and into my life. G.
Yes, ma'am. As always, humble, and thank y'all for all this. Like I said, this is really like a badge of honor to me. All of y'all, it to me. Mary, I love you. You gorilla in the mist. Justin, all y'all great. I loved all the stories. Kate, Karen, all of y'all. What more can I say? I think it's like I said before. We the visual hope that's needed in these times of disparity, right? Whatever level of walk we walk through, be black, white, or other. Professor, ex-prisoner, liberator, Mary, you liberator, right? We carry all that with us, right? And we owe that, right? I don't think, like her always say, we got some big shoulders, right? but we don't shrink from it. We go through it, right? We through people, and I'm just humbled to be here, and I thank y'all for it. I mean, from the depths of my soul, like I say, me and Justin ain't too far from each other, right? It's like they look at you crazy when you're a black dude messing with arts anyway, right? So, thank y'all. I'm humbled, I'm honored, and like I say, let's just be the visual proof of that hope, and that's what the arts give. Thank y'all. Love
I
y'all.
love that, G. Love you too. You are the visual proof of that hope. Live in it every day. So blessed to have you in my life. Thank you. Mary, close us out, freedom fighter.
All right. This was a beautiful day. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our panel and for sharing with us. It's always a joy, just a great joy to hear formerly incarcerated people's stories, and to hear us together and to be together free. That's amazing. Beautiful things happen when we're together free. And so I honor you and I thank you all. And the only way to go is up.
From your lips to God's ears, Mary. Let's go up. Let's get through this very difficult time. I'm going to hand the last words over to Scott, who's going to close us out. And I just want to thank everybody who was able to attend today, and especially our beautiful panelists. And I want to also hold up Autumn Smith, who was in the recorded panel, but who was not able to make it here today. Her spirit and her life infuse everything that we were talking about. And I wish that she could have been here with us.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Mary, Katie, Justin, G, Curt. I'll even thank you. It is an honor to have you here today. And thanks again for joining us. And I think that's it for our session. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I just share close us out with a bit of art, gift from the Shakespeare Behind Bars Circle at the E.C. Brooks Correctional Facility in Muskegon, Michigan. Would you forgive me if I took the I in give followed by the F in for to form that little word if, which contains all possibilities of hope, not expectations, of peace, not anger of my unmet need, of mercy, not seasoned with violence, of justice, not blind, but fair, of love, not unrequited, but unconditional? Would you forgive me if I told you that I suffer for what I did? I told you that I wish I could take it back. Would you forgive me if there was anything I could do for you that would relieve the pain I've caused you? Would you forgive me if I wept all the tears you wept and more to fill up all the creeks and streams and rivers and lakes, oceans and seas, enough to drown the whole world in sorrow and grief? Would you forgive me if I gave you my eyes, I gave you my teeth, I stood before you blind and toothless? Would that make your pain less? Would you forgive me if I stood naked and humbled before you and gave you the sword of righteousness to release your revenge upon my head and slay me like the heartless bastard I am? Would you forgive me if I told you I was sorry? I told you that I loved you. I told you that by forgiving me who wronged you, I release you from harm? Would you forgive me if I told you that the act of forgiveness is not about me, but about you? Forgiving is not excusing, forgetting, pardoning. Forgiveness is not one of those fancy words like atonement, exoneration, justification, reconciliation. Forgiveness is just another word for freedom, not mine, but yours.